For this session, we plan to talk about employee engagement and our perspective on why employee engagement is important now, but also may become even more important in 2023.
Welcome to the Talent Culture Podcast. Learn how the most innovative companies implement culture and make it part of their strategy. On the Talent Culture Podcast, we're interviewing business professionals on how they prioritize onboarding and culture, bringing our own expertise and experience from working with dozens of companies on exactly this. The Talent Culture Podcast is an actionable strategy guide that can either help you implement these strategies in your company or learn how you get buy-in from executives. Your host is Søren Bolvig, CEO at Empact. Enjoy.
Employee engagement in 2023, I think from my perspective, is maybe going to be even more important than maybe in 2022. Not having said that, everybody seems to agree on that employee engagement is something that increases the overall company's productivity, efficiency, and overall well-being of the employees, and actually keeps the churn down from employees. There's a lot of positive things said about this. I don't think when looking at 23, which most people seem to agree on is going to be maybe at least some time after recession. My argument would be that even there it's going to be more important. We're going to see that it's going to be an increased pressure on the people to perform even better. There's going to be a lookout, or that's going to be a focus, especially strong focus on creating more efficiency. And that can be obtained by having stronger employee engagement. That this is not something that's coming from HR communication. It has to come from top management. They need to understand that the asset, their people, need to perform in an environment where it's going to be more tough, and they should be aware of not falling into the trap on just looking at costs again, where we try to cost reduce. And of course, it always makes sense to look at your core and what is it you're good at. But then again, I think most companies, especially the deskless one, would agree on that their key assets are the employees. So if they want them to perform even better than they're doing today, they need to have a strong look at the engagement level and have a discussion on how do you raise that. Raising it, there can be many ways to raise it, of course. It's a question on how do you lead them. It's a question on what tools do they have in their hand to perform the work. There's a lot of ways of improving engagement, as long as it doesn't become the tool in itself. But you have to have the long look at what is the culture here? How do we make people believe in what we're doing and equip them with the tools to do it? I think when looking at the point of view of executives, they are they're also concerned about leadership and culture and everything like that. But one thing, especially the financial part, that you understand the business case. So you need, when you're working with the employee engagement, you need somehow to put in metrics that also shows this is a beneficial or a positive business case. It needs to show that you're actually gaining more efficiency, you are reducing the churn, you are advancing faster in your career path. All of this needs to be shown in the business case. And if you do that, I think then you most probably will have the executive attention. But it's just like any other thing, you need to talk their language. So if they're concerned about the spreadsheet or they're concerned about the P&L, you need to talk their language and say that the more engaged people you get, the more efficient you get, or the more better performing a company will be. But you need to show that in numbers. That's what people tend to forget, especially when they talk about technology. They love to talk about, look at this functionality, look at this new feature. No, it's about the adoption rate and how you make people use it and gain the value of it. That needs to be your focus. It's the whole employee buy-in comes from that they see the benefit of engaging in a high degree. And I think that has to be stated very clearly also when introducing new tools. And that's the most simple example to give. Is like, why should I use this? Does it contribute to my day, or does it make things better for me? If it doesn't, I think you're going to have a difficult time in explaining why to use this tool. So, but if you can illustrate it from the employee's perspective, that this is really beneficial for them too, then you would have what you call a win-win situation where the company gains something and the employees gain something. And that's where you get the traction. That's where you get the employee engagement going up. There is a shift, but there is a shift towards automation. There's a shift towards digitalization, digital transformation. It's something we've been talking about for many years, I would say. But again, it's something that everybody likes to talk to, but it's difficult to actually execute. So I think it's all about, trying to start in one corner and grow from there, and try to be realistic as possible, and having the employees' perspective in mind when you're doing it. It's just like creating change. If the individual person doesn't understand the change, this will not happen. We may have seen in 2022 that there's a lack of talent, there's a difficulty in getting resources, but the last coming month, it has been more and more, the burden has lifted a bit. So it's not too easy to get the good ones, but has become easier. I think the focus is going to be much more on if it gets getting into times where things get tough, and a lot of companies will focus on their cost and everything like that. How do you keep the momentum in the engagement? What do you do for the employees so they feel they can contribute or being able to contribute in a higher degree than they're doing today? And I think that's the essence, not to skip this paradigm of engagement and try to focus only on cost and reducing the cost base the whole time, but keep that in mind that the people, you can achieve some of the cost savings, efficiency, by actually increasing the engagement. And I think that's the direction you should go, because you may end up and some companies have a tendency to do it, where they focus strong on cost, and then they see when the recession gives, stops up a bit, or it actually lightens up, the good people will leave because they have been under pressure during the whole period. So I think if you want to avoid that, then try to get them more engaged and focus on that. That will increase your efficiency. It's not simple. I don't think. If you want to create high value, I don't think it's simple. Of course, you can have lucky strikes and so on, but it is hard work. But it's also keeping the focus on and try to do things and that's maybe the old saying is not try to eat the elephant in one piece, but try to chop it up and take small pieces, and then you will maybe get to the end. On how we try to engage our people or create higher employee engagement, and actually we try to, on an individual basis, to develop models for not only career paths, but also how can they achieve both a higher development for themselves and for the company at the same time. So it's all about tapping into what's mutual beneficial. It might be easier in a smaller company where you can just look out on the floor and say who's there, how are they doing, you can almost see everybody. But then again, our company is distributed around several offices in the world. That becomes difficult. So one of the things that actually is in our agenda is how do you do this engagement and cultural shift online? And that's where I don't think we have a silver bullet for it, but we're trying things out. We're trying to, how do you do the one-to-ones? How do you do your onboarding virtually? How do you do this virtually? So that's for us a much more a challenge, I think. And how do you equip managers around the world with the right tools, and we do it in the same way? That's more the challenge we are facing right now and trying to solve. But I think it's got something to do with having this always open dialogue and having the tools for an open dialogue. Constantly feedback from the employees. This is working, this is not working. Okay, could we improve it? And I think that's at least what we're trying out now. We're also on a learning curve, and I think that's something we may be going to do in half a year. We're going to do differently. And I think that's maybe some of the things that also other companies will experience, that the model they work with should be flexible and changeable, because you get learnings on the road and then you need to change it. So I think that's also, if you talk to the bright ones, they will say that adaptability, flexibility is one of the cornerstones of achieving your success. But there is also a thin line when you look at adapting to cultures, which you should do. But if you want to have some sort of similar corporate culture or company culture, there needs to be some, I would say, some areas where, for example, if you take the developers, or if you are in some Eastern European countries where we have some of our developers, it becomes like they're not comfortable on raising their voice, for example. They're not comfortable on having this. For example, we introduced what we call success stories, where everybody needs to participate in and needs to say something. And it may be small things. It may be like, I didn't like swimming. I went out swimming 2 times this week. Just small stories for themselves. And not even be work related. Some are work related, some are not. But we try to make people speak up, because the culture we would like is to have feedback constantly. And we have too many people that are not speaking up. We don't get the feedback. So actually, there we a bit do not adapt to the culture, where the culture may be in a wise, just listen and do. But here we try to make them reflect on it and speak up. And we need to force that, because that's the culture we want to build. That's the engagement we want to have. We want to have people that speak up and say, this is not working, or I don't like this, or I disagree with this. And actually, I think we have come, it's just like, taking the Scandinavian leadership model and put it somewhere else, where our model is like, here in Scandinavia, we're open, we listen, we have dialogue, and everything like that. And we try to force it in and not adapting. But then you need to give them some other tools to speak up in writing or whatever, how they feel comfortable, but we need to force them that way.
This was the Talent Culture Podcast. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next episode.